If you're looking to upgrade the strength of that factory two-piece drive shaft on your 2018 and newer automatic GT, then the Driveshaft shop's one-piece carbon fiber option might just be the one for you. Now, the carbon fiber drive shaft that we're talking about here today is going to weigh in right around 30 pounds and will deliver a very stout build along with a corresponding 1-year warranty, all for right around $1,200. Now, the installation itself will get a middle of the road 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter according to the site. Take about an hour or so from start to finish, but hang out till the end of the video and we'll show you how it's done. So the DSS 3.8-inch carbon fiber option here is going to be interesting in the fact that typically these things are designed to help save a bunch of weight with rotational mass, helping the car feel a bit more responsive throughout the revs, along with adding some strength over the two-piece stocker you are replacing. However, that's not really the case here with the 18 and newer option that's on the table with me here today, as it's essentially going to weigh the same as the factory two-piece steel shaft that you are replacing at right around 30 pounds or so when you're all said and done. But if you're not saving a bunch of weight here, what's the big appeal with this option? Well, I would say the strength over that factory two-piece drive shaft is going to be the biggie. And this is mainly directed at those big power 2018 and newer auto guys out there, and not so much the stock or light bolt-on cars, because let's face it, something like this really isn't necessary. However, on those 10R80 cars launching off a brake with a sticky tire in place, that's when something like this really does come into play, because it has that torsional strength to take that initial hit but without breaking. Now, that's not to say something like this can't or won't break, because after all, no part is really invincible, especially in the world of drag racing, but an upgrade over the stocker is really a no-brainer here. Now, full disclosure guys, this is the same exact part I plan on using in my 2019 build. As a matter of fact, when we get to the install later on, this puppy is gonna be going onto my ride. But what do you say we talk about the construction briefly? And listen guys, extremely high quality is the first thing that comes to mind the moment you unbox this thing. 3.8 inches, again, is your diameter, which does combine the woven carbon fiber along with the 300M stub mounted into that billet aluminum plate, which is really just gonna help you with strength, and something that DSS has done over the years on several 1,000+ horsepower cars with fantastic results. But what does that all mean for you guys in regards to what this thing will or will not hold? Well, unfortunately, DSS doesn't give us any exact horsepower or torque ratings with this particular SKU, but looking back on the 15 through 17 carbon fiber shaft for the Mustang, and they claim that thing would hold up to 1,000 horsepower and operate up to 9,500 RPM without any vibration. So for the record, that shaft did share a similar build and diameter, meaning those numbers should be applicable to the 18 plus model that we're talking about here today. Now, one big thing to point out here guys is that DSS does claim that the e-brake cable bracket on the 18 and newer auto cars will either need to be clearanced or relocated altogether as to not interfere with the shaft itself. And failure to do so will result in the voiding of your 1-year warranty with this particular product. Why is this such a big deal? Well, the reason it is so important is that because the smallest amount of damage to the carbon fiber material here can lead to failure. It's imperative that you ensure there is no interference here underneath the car once everything has been installed. And speaking of which, what do you say we show you guys how to get this puppy in place using my 2019 GT right now?
Tools used for this install: 3/8 drive, extension, tape measure, 15mm socket, 13mm socket, a 12.12mm socket, 10mm socket, air ratchet, mallet, 8mm Allen key, 7mm Allen key, pry bar, torque wrench. Impact is optional.
All right, now we're gonna be using a 15mm socket to remove our exhaust from the cat back. Make sure those are loose. You can slide them back a little bit too. But we're gonna move on to the hangers in the back now. All right, now we're gonna be removing the two 13mm bolts that are holding the rear hangers on. And you can remove this hardware because it does just hang there. All right, now we're gonna be removing the two 13mm bolts holding the rear hangers on, and it's gonna look like this on the other side as well. Now I'm using a air ratchet here, but you can get it out with a regular ratchet. I'm just gonna speed it up a little bit. Now I'm going to take off the bottom bolt. Again, these hangers are held on by a little hook on the body itself, so they won't go anywhere. And the exhaust will just be able to hang just like that. All right, now with the help of a buddy, we're gonna be removing the cat backs. Just get them off the hangers there, in the back. Lower it down, nice and easy. All right, now before we take the old drive shaft out and install the new drive shaft, there is one measurement that is necessary to be made. It's from the rear of the drive shaft to the front of this flange. And you want it to be right around 3 1/4 or 3 3/4. This one's sitting at 3 1/4 on the dot. If it's out of spec, you do want to send it back to Driveshaft shop to have them put it back in the spec or to send you a brand new one. All right, now to install the drive shaft, we do have to put the transmission in neutral in order to rotate it around. This is an automatic, so if you just press and hold the start stop button, it'll go into the accessory mode. You can put your foot on the brake, put it in neutral, and then turn the car back off. It will say transmission's not in park, and it may use a little bit of your battery. But if you're quick enough, you won't drain your battery. All right, now that the transmission is in neutral, we can freely move that drive shaft. We're gonna be removing the 6 10mm bolts that are holding on the rear CV joint. All right, now we're at the output flange of the transmission. We're using a 12.12mm socket for these bolts holding the drive shaft on. All right, now some of these bolts are thread locked from the factory and are torque to spec, so I'm gonna be using an air impact. All right, so we're right in the middle of the drive shaft. You can see our carrier bearing. It's held on by two 13mm bolts. It is a 2-piece drive shaft. Since we're replacing it with a 1-piece, we will not be reusing this bearing or the mounts. Just gonna undo that one, take this one out completely. Now you wanna make sure you're supporting the whole drive shaft because this is the last bolt that's holding it. All right, I'm gonna put my tools down. Take this drive shaft out. Now you may have to hit the back side of that to get it out. All right, now that we have the old drive shaft and the new drive shaft on the table, you can see some of the main differences. This one requires a little bit of adapter flange to get it onto your rear axle. This one from the factory just uses the standard 8mm hardware. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking and separating these flanges and then reattaching this flange to the front side of the rear diff, and then we're going to be putting the drive shaft up to it and tightening that down. So I'm just taking out this hardware. Remember to save that hardware, we are going to be reusing it. Again, this is an 8mm Allen key. And then you'll notice from Driveshaft shops, they come marked, and that is the orientation it needs to go back at. All right, there we go. Now this should come apart just like that. And I'm gonna leave the hardware in there, and we're gonna take this right to the Mustang and install this so we can get right into installing the drive shaft. All right, now we're gonna take our adapter flange, bring it up to the housing of the rear diff. I'm just gonna start all of these up. And you can see that it just slides right in, it's a perfect fit. All right, so we're gonna be tightening these up. It is a 7mm for the inside of the adapter flange. All right, now I'm using a little bit of a soft face hammer just to tap it in, just to make sure it's sitting. All right, now that we have our flange tightened down, loosely tightened down, we're gonna put 2 of the longer 8mm bolts in. And we're gonna be using a pry bar, and we're gonna set it up just like this, so we can put tension on that and tighten at the same time to get our torque numbers right. Now we're gonna go to 45 foot-pounds on the shaft here. There's 2. You're gonna go all the way around on this to 45. All right, now's the time to install your new drive shaft. We're gonna go above our exhaust there, put the backside in first, and then I'm gonna put a couple bolts in there just to keep it in place. Spin it around until I find that hole. There it is right there. I'm gonna put one more in, just to keep it in place. All right, start those threads. Now I'm going to start one of the threads at the front. Again, we are reusing the factory hardware in the front of the drive shaft only. All right, now we're going to tighten the 2 that we started already, put in a couple more, turn the drive shaft. These are going to be torqued to 45 foot-pounds as well. So right now we are just hand tightening them until that lock washer seats. That. All right, now we're going to start a couple more of these bolts. All right, now we're gonna put the rest of our bolts into the front of the drive shaft and the output shaft of the transmission. Again, this is a 12mm hardware. Again, I'm just hand tightening it, quarter turn at a time. All right, now I have a couple extensions on here just to get past those exhausts. This is gonna go up to 70 foot-pounds once we get all of the hardware on there. We will have to get back up into the car to put it in neutral and to spin that around. That one is decently tight. And I'm just gonna start the 4th one. You may not be able to see it, but it's all the way at the top. I'm just gonna start that hardware. All right, now we got our torque wrench set to 70 foot-pounds. We're crank these. All right, now we can move to the back and torque the back down. All right, now that we have our 8mm back on, we are going to torque the last of our 6 Allen head bolts to 45 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern just to make sure it's seated properly. All right, that's gonna wrap up my install of the Driveshaft Shop's one-piece carbon fiber drive shaft. And for all things Mustang, keep it here at AmericanMuscle.com.